This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to the third edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. We have a very important show today. We're going to be talking about the appointment of Special Counsel Robert Mueller, former director of the FBI. I've had experience with the director myself during the years, the Clinton years, leading up to 9/11 and thereafter on behalf of certain clients. We're going to talk about the traitors in the Republican Party, the establishment traitors, like John McCain, Jason Chaffetz, the head of the Senate Intel Committee, Richard Burr, senator from North Carolina, and others who have stabbed the president in the back because they want to have their candidate, their establishment candidate, run for president in 2020, in my opinion. And we're going to talk about something in and around the so-called Russian connection, and that is the death of Seth Rich. He was a DNC operative. He was killed. He was murdered on the streets of Washington, D.C. The death raises a lot of questions. It was all too convenient. And we're going to have as a special guest my friend and my client, Gennifer Flowers, who knows exactly what the Clintons are capable of, who knows that the Clintons are actually capable of killing people. And, of course, it benefited the Clintons if Seth Rich was murdered. And finally, we're going to wrap up with our verdict segment today. Perhaps a little humor. We'll see how the show goes. But let me get right into the issue of the appointment of FBI Director Robert Mueller. First of all, it happened because of political pressure. It happened because the Republican establishment willingly and happily caved in to what the vile leftists in the Democratic Party and in the leftist media, CNN, which I call the Communist News Network at this point, it used to be the Clinton News Network, the primetime boys of CNN primarily, everybody from Jake Tapper to Don Lemon to Van Jones to Anderson Cooper, pressing to start an investigation which they hope and pray, given their alleged belief in God, will lead to the impeachment of President Trump. And, of course, you have Rachel Maddow at MSNBC, Lawrence O'Donnell, others, the Washington Post, the New York Times, the LA Times, a myriad of others who basically this has been the best week in their leftist communist lives, essentially. But how did we get to this point? Only because people like John McCain, who absolutely hate the president of the United States, he's extremely jealous that he never became president. The people rejected him, but they did love Trump and they voted for him. He wants to see Trump destroyed. And, of course, he loves the media. He loves the leftist media. He thrives on it. A man who's never seen a war he doesn't like, who at this point would have us fighting conflicts probably in at least 5 places around the world, wants to see Trump fail. And then you've got individuals like Paul Ryan, who also undercut the president this week, Speaker of the House. Of course, after he undercuts him, then he comes back and tries to pretend that he's really in his favor. This guy not only looks like a cross between Howdy Doody and Eddie Munster, he's two-faced. Perhaps he had 2 faces on both sides of his body. Then you've got someone like Jason Chaffetz, and excuse the French. But here's a guy who goes on TV, who wants to run now for the governor of Utah, who was literally pelted with tomatoes at town hall meetings in Utah by leftists who he thinks he needs their vote to win as governor, who also turned on the president and was quick to say he was going to conduct an investigation into the so-called Russian connection and the memoranda of James Comey, which I believe, and I'll get into that, he ponied after the fact. I believe he wrote them only after he was fired. And we're going to seek to get into that and prove that. and I'll get into that in just a few minutes. But Chaffetz now has lost interest in conducting hearings. He said he was going to retire from Congress in a couple years, but now he's going to retire quickly, and he's reported by Politico, the leftist rag in Washington, D.C., internet publication, that he's now going to become a commentator on Fox News. Well, I guess he'll join the likes of Karl Rove, who has also been stabbing the president in the back, both before and after his election. So the fact that we now have a Robert Mueller with an independent counsel investigation, the modern-day equivalent, with the power that he has to indict without seeking the approval of the Attorney General or the Deputy Attorney General, is not just because of leftist Democrats and the leftist media. It's because the Brutuses in the Republican Party have literally stabbed the President of the United States in the back. And that's because they're still hopeful that in 2020, they'll put up their establishment hack to run for president. They resent Trump. They can't control Trump. The money train has been stopped to some extent in Washington, D.C. They no longer can go to their soirees in Georgetown and scratch each other's backs, hoping that someone's going to be stuffing money into their pockets at the same time. So that's where we are. Now let's talk about Robert Mueller. He was the former director of the CIA, of the FBI. Everybody says he has this great reputation. Well, that's what people say in Washington about people that have been there and have establishment credentials. Now, it could be worse, but I got to tell you, during my years at Judicial Watch, I represented 2 FBI special agents, one by the name of Robert Wright and another by the name of John Vincent. I met them while I was working with Shippers, who was the House impeachment manager, the lawyer, in Chicago. And he introduced me to them. And they told me that the FBI had suppressed investigations into Saudi money laundering. And this was before 9/11. And they were very concerned that a terrorist attack like 9/11 could happen because all this Saudi money was pouring into terrorist interests in the United States. He told me that there was a war, actually, between Hamas and the Israeli intelligence agency Mossad in the United States, and that they were killing each other, but that no one wanted to address it. Now, who was the FBI director at the time? Robert Mueller. He suppressed this information, and in fact, the FBI tried to drum both Wright and Vincent out of the FBI, threatening to remove their security clearances. So I'm a little bit suspect, to put it mildly, as to FBI Director Robert Mueller. However, he is at the end of his career. It could have been worse, and there are some benefits to have a special counsel right now. The benefits are, for Trump, is that once there's a special counsel appointed with all this independent authority, and he starts grand jury proceedings, basically it's going to take evidence off the market. In other words, the evidence will be drawn into the grand jury through subpoena, through testimony, and other means. It's going to make it much more difficult for the political hacks in Congress, Democrat and Republican, to get their hands on this stuff, to use it to smear President Trump. However, it does pose great risk for the targets and subjects of that investigation. People like Lieutenant General Mike Flynn, people like Trump's associates, Paul Manafort and Roger Stone. Because what happens in most of these special counsel or independent counsel investigations, they wind up going on for a very long time. Iran-Contra went on for 7 years. A friend of mine actually ran that at the time, a very fine criminal defense lawyer who was very well-intentioned, and at the end, for the most part, did the right thing. But what happens is, in most of these investigations, such as happened with Scooter Libby, when it was alleged that Dick Cheney and his team had unmasked the name of a CIA agent. So these special counsels usually look for a scalp. They have to justify spending tens of millions of dollars. And the people that are at great risk, in this case, are people like General Mike Flynn, Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, and others. They're going to have a very rocky road ahead. But I do believe that the special counsel will probably insulate President Trump from any prosecution. And it will keep Congress from getting the information that it wants, and it'll make it more difficult for Freedom of Information Act requesters to get information. Now, just last week, on behalf of Freedom Watch, my group, the that you can go to at freedomwatchusa.org, I filed a Freedom of Information Act request to get all of Comey's memoranda, not just the memoranda dealing with his interactions with President Trump, but his interactions with President Obama, people on behalf of Hillary Clinton, and others. This is going to be a long process, and it will be more difficult to get that documentation because the government now is going to assert certain exemptions saying that this information has been subpoenaed by the special counsel and is subject to a criminal investigatory privilege. So this is where we are right now. The American people may have less information about what's going on. In the end, the special counsel will probably benefit the president himself, but the people in and around the president, the so-called scalps, are at great risk because this independent counsel or special counsel, whatever you want to call him, is probably going to want to justify the money that he spends for taxpayers. Happens over and over again. I've had a lot of experience in Washington, D.C., and I got to tell you this, I watch Fox News. I really like Fox News. I watch CNN just to see what the other side is saying and MSNBC. But I would say 90% of the people they bring on as commentators, these kids and other people, they don't have a clue what goes on in Washington. They really don't. And, take it with a grain of salt. I mean, there may be a lot of pretty faces and they may have nice legs, wide shots on Fox News. But there's really little substance that comes out of all of this. And it's time that these networks started reporting and bringing on people, and I'm not just tooting my own horn, but I'm tooting anybody that has some experience here. I would say Jay Sekulow is one that actually knows what he's talking about. People that really understand what's going on. They need to bring on lawyers. They need to bring on people who have been through this before, not heads of public interest groups like my former group Judicial Watch when they bring on Tom Fitton. And in fact, he really doesn't know what's going on. And there are other people like that are on the stations. And we need to start understanding exactly what's happening. And that's why we have this show, because this show gets to the truth. So we're going to be right back with our second segment. We're going to talk about the media whores in Washington, D.C. We'll be right back.
The left-wing media is an existential threat to America. Whether it's the fake news network that says, this is CNN, or the left's corrupt establishment networks like ABC, NBC, and CBS, the left-leaning media has become increasingly more dishonest. This corruption of the mainstream media reached a fever pitch during last year's election and has continued this year with their coverage of the new administration. At Freedom Watch, we started the leftist media strike force to combat the left's hold on the media. We monitor, report, and take action against the inaccuracies, slander, and threats that the media generates against conservatives and conservative policies. Go to leftistmediastrikeforce.org to join the fight and donate to help us battle the fake news media. The modern mainstream media has become nothing more than a protection racket for the establishment politicians and corporations that are running our country into the ground. And we need your help. That's leftistmediastrikeforce.org.
Fearless.
He's claiming he's crazy, he's racist, he's out to kill the Democrats.
Dangerous.
I don't care, he uses the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special Prosecutor
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
Welcome back to Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. That's yours truly. Well, let's talk about the scope of the special counsel investigation, criminal investigation. It was geared to get into the so-called Russian connection. And it was interesting that yesterday at a press conference, President Trump referred to the fact that he at least knows from his part that there was no connection, there was no communication, but he left open the possibility that there was with others in the campaign. And that's why I say people like Stone and Manafort are at some risk here. But there was a part at the end that talks about of this referral to Robert Mueller, the special counsel, that and related matters, it says. It means he can go wherever he wants. But it's very interesting that the referral was not framed in a way that it gets into what happened with Hillary Clinton during the campaign. In other words, the misuse of her private email server and other crimes which she clearly committed. Now, it's not been shown that President Trump or anybody around him has committed a crime, I might add. But yes, it is quite clear that Hillary Clinton committed a crime. So you have to ask yourself the question, what's happening here? Is this politics or is it getting to the truth of everything? And we're going to do our best at Freedom Watch to convince the special counsel, Robert Mueller. I will attempt to be in contact with him. I will attempt in an appropriate and legal way to pressure him to do his job to get into what happened with Clinton. And, of course, we have cases dealing with that right now. I have a case for wrongful death on behalf of Pat Smith and Charles Woods, the parents of Ty Woods and Sean Smith, who were killed along with Ambassador Chris Stevens at Benghazi. And they were killed because Hillary Clinton was using a non-secure private email server. It was hacked. Everybody says at least 5 times. Even Comey said that. And it gave rise to terrorists finding the location of this American consulate in Benghazi, resulted in the deaths of our clients' sons, brave heroes. This is serious. Why is that not being investigated? But there's another death that occurred, and that's the death of an individual by the name of Seth Rich. He was a worker at the Democratic National Committee on Capitol Hill. He is the one who, it's been intimated, not too subtly I might add, by WikiLeaks leader and chairman Julian Assange, was the one who leaked all of the DNC emails to WikiLeaks. Of course, everybody's complaining about interference, but people forget what those emails said. They showed that not just the Democratic committee, but Hillary Clinton and others were colluding with the media, giving them questions for the debates to destroy Donald Trump in the debates, and that they were engaging in other illegal acts. The emails of John Podesta came out. Now, here's a guy, frankly, who not only looks like a rat, but he is a rat. I encountered him during the Clinton years. I had him on the witness stand before Judge Royce Lamberth. He is a bottom feeder cockroach of the highest magnitude, and I don't use that term lightly. You know, cockroaches survive when even a nuclear blast. This guy's been around forever, and he's still chugging along. So why isn't the special counsel looking at the people like Podesta, like Clinton? And why is it that Seth Rich conveniently turned up dead, murdered, just a few weeks after this information came out through WikiLeaks of the improper conduct and criminal conduct committed by people in and around the Clintons? Now, we know that during the Clinton years, over 80 people died, material witnesses, and I'm talking about the White House years. If that didn't happen, then why did Clinton people leave lists of dead people on the chairs of Linda Tripp, on the chairs of whistleblowers who revealed the first email scandal that I was involved with? This is a real possibility that there's a death here, and we're going to be pushing the special counsel to investigate the death of Seth Rich. The American people need to rise up here because our country's been hijacked by politicians. It's been hijacked by the leftist media. We voted for President Trump. We want to see him succeed. We don't want to see him destroyed. But to the extent that we now have a special counsel, let him use his criminal powers, his grand jury powers, to investigate not just Hillary Clinton and Benghazi, but the death of Seth Rich and so-called related matters. So you have my word at Freedom Watch that we will undertake this task. I've been a lawyer for 40 years in Washington. I know my way around. But you, the American people, need to rise up and demand that our government works for us, not working for the Clintons and other illegal forces in Washington, D.C. So that's my message in this phase of Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman. I guess maybe I call myself Special Counsel. I'll be right back with more information.
Lord Acton was right. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And as Ronald Reagan said, government isn't the solution to our problems, government is the problem. Whether it's the power of our corrupt elected officials, corrupt unelected bureaucrats, or corrupt local, state, and federal judges, Freedom Watch stands for you. We fight the battles for you. We are your Justice Department. We are small, but like a mouse that roars, we are fierce. We won some of the biggest cases against government overreach and corruption, like the 2013 case against the CIA NSA data collection of every American. We have lawsuits against Berkeley, the Federal Bureau of Land Management, and Black Lives Matter. We need your help in our fight for your freedom. Join the battle and donate to Freedom Watch right now. Call 1-844-FW-ETHIC or go to www.freedomwatchusa.org and donate generously to our cause.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
To support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
Welcome back to Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. I have on the phone right now someone who's become a very good friend, a client, a really brave lady, a classy lady, named Gennifer Flowers. I think you've heard of her before. We fought the wars during the Clinton years. Hillary Clinton, the wicked witch of the left, tried to destroy her along with the War Room with George Stephanopoulos and James Carville. We filed suit on her behalf. She really is someone who has stuck her neck out for this country. And I wanted to bring her on, not just so you can reacclimate yourself with her, because she is a great person, but also she has experience in dealing with the Clintons. And we talked during one of the segments of this show about how Seth Rich, the staffer of the Democratic National Committee, someone who is most likely involved in leaking the information to WikiLeaks about John Podesta, about Hillary Clinton, about Donna Brazile, about others during the campaign of 2016, turned up dead, murdered in Washington, D.C. Very mysterious. No one took anything from him. It didn't look like it was a robbery. It occurred just a few weeks after the information from WikiLeaks came out, which basically showed that John Podesta had committed crimes along with others on behalf of Hillary Clinton. And Gennifer can tell you her experiences with the Clintons straight on, because she lived with them in Little Rock, Arkansas. She not only saw what happened to her and experienced what happened to her, she saw what happened to others. Jen, if you could let us in and reacquaint the people with Bonnie and Clyde of American politics, Bill and Hillary Clinton.
Hi, Larry. It was great to talk to you. It's been many years now of a good friendship, and I have so much respect for you. My experience with the Clintons is about 39 years worth, and yes, I've seen people. I've seen the attempted murder of people. Well, you know, my neighbor at Quapaw Tower was beaten and left for dead. And because he said he had a video of Bill coming to my door, which I had no doubt that he did. But it was interesting to me that there wasn't more press on this recent murder. And I would invite anyone out there that hasn't already visited the Clinton death list. It's very interesting stuff. I know some of the people on there and know some of it to be a fact. But it just amazes me, Larry, that just so little was said about that.
Well, we know that during the Clinton years, lists of dead people, 80 to be exact, or more, were left on the chairs of Linda Tripp when she was working in the White House, in the White House counsel's office, and also at the Department of Defense. We know that 2 whistleblowers that I write about in my book, Whores, Why and How I Came to Fight the Establishment, which you can find at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, WND.com, and other places, and Jen, you're in it, obviously, that these kinds of things happened routinely. This is not something new for the Clintons, and these whistleblowers that revealed the first email scandal, which gave rise to a criminal contempt proceeding before Royce Lamberth, also had lists of dead people left on their chairs. So if the Clintons didn't kill people, they certainly wanted people to think that they had killed people. And then when I took the when I took the deposition of Harold Ickes, the deputy White House counsel under the Clintons, Ickes has mafia connections in New York with the restaurant workers. I asked him if he ever asked for any favors from the mafia. He literally jumped across the table at me, threw his microphone on the table, the conference room table where we conducted these depositions. People remember it was all over
the news at the time and also on cable news. And he walked out, and I had the videographer film him as he was walking out. And I said, Mr. Ickes, where are you going? And he says, well, in this southern accent, of course, he's from the Bronx in New York. He says, Mr. Klayman, if I don't leave right now, I'm going to leave something on your floor. So this is Harold Ickes.
Golly. Wow.
Yeah. Next time he came back, Lambert ordered him to come back because he wouldn't answer questions. So I put my arm on his shoulder before the deposition. I said, Mr. Ickes, do you have a doggy bag? Because I really don't want you to leave something on my floor. So...
Oh, my God. It's not funny. None of this is funny. But
yeah, it is. If it wasn't so tragic.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, my goodness. That's amazing. But I just don't understand, like I said, why there's not more attention paid to this last murder. You know, nobody's talking about it. The media that wants to talk about fake news, as Donald puts it, and ignore things like that have so much substance. I don't understand.
There is an investigator in Washington, D.C. He's been on Hannity in the last few days, and he does claim that the D.C. police and the FBI may have a laptop of Seth Rich, which would show communications with WikiLeaks, which would help provide a motive. But again, we get back to James Comey, and he's covered this stuff up. And the FBI obviously, has the ability to find out what's going on. So we're going to be pressing Special Counsel Robert Mueller, good luck to look into this. And Freedom Watch is working on looking into it as well and taking some action. I know some people that know the family of Seth Rich.
Well, thank goodness for you and your organization. My goodness, what would we do without you?
Well, thank you. What would we do without people like you, Gennifer, who risked their lives to come forward during the Clinton years and continue to speak out? But, one of the things that was interesting about those Clinton years, and this is in my book, Horrors, Why and How I Came to Fight the Establishment, is the irony is the Monica Lewinsky scandal really saved Bill Clinton in a way because it drew attention away from his taking bribes from the Chinese and giving up classified information. Of course, no one did anything about that then, but they're real concerned about Trump right now, even though there's no showing he did anything wrong. But what happened was, and I want to get you to comment on it, because of all this, and you were dragged into it. You didn't do this willingly. You became a potential witness in front of Congress and elsewhere, and of course you spoke out. But the country really ground to a halt. And the real scandals, taking bribes from the Chinese and compromising national security, that died. We helped uncover that at Judicial Watch. That died because people were more interested in the sex stuff. And that seems to be what's happening now, too, is that the president faces a lot of challenges in Korea, challenges in Iran, building of nuclear weapons, intercontinental ballistic missiles, and even his own party is stabbing him in the back. And the American people, may befall a fate even worse than what happened at 9/11. The line I used to use is that while Bill Clinton was having sex with Monica Lewinsky in the Oval Office, the American people were the ones that were getting screwed. And it's
amen, brother.
I don't want that to happen again.
Amen.
So,
I used to use it. Speaking of your book and the use of the word whore, I used to say quite often, and still do occasionally, that the media are whores for ratings, and they don't care about the substance necessarily. It's how many magazines they can sell, or how many the big ratings they can get for their television stations, and on it goes. And of course, that hasn't changed, obviously.
Well, you remember how they treated you, and
sure, I'll never forget it. In fact, it has affected my entire life, and will continue to forever. It will go on to my heirs. It's not something that ends. It never ends. I've grown to be able to deal with it better than I could in the beginning, of course, thankfully, or I wouldn't have been able to endure it. But Go ahead.
People remember that you didn't come out willingly. They were on to you, okay, the media. And that's when you gave your press conference.
Those that bothered to pay attention and get the facts realized that I did not break the story. It was broken through Larry Nichols' lawsuit. Of course, that's a big, long story. And then when Bill decided to throw his hat in the ring to run for the presidency, the national media started looking into who is this guy. And they started finding that press release. The Star magazine broke the story. And then I thought that if I came forth and told the truth about the relationship, that they would leave me alone, that the media would leave me alone. Here's the story. Here's the way it happened. Here's the truth. Now, you've got it. And I thought they would leave me alone. Well, yeah, I just created my own little hell. Wasn't little. I mean, it was just really unbelievable how it proceeded from there. And it just totally affected my life. Totally affected it. I've been determined that to be positive and to make positives come out of it. But I have suffered a great deal from it, as has my family and people that care about me, that really know me. And you know, thankfully for you, folks like you that stood by me and helped defend me. These huge power structures are really hard to take on when you're just a little girl from Little Rock.
Well, you know, in today's day and age, with the NSA, the CIA, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, we know that they've got all of this stuff on their supercomputers. You know, the communications of Bill, not just that little tape that you had released at the time. People knew what was going on, and you had these little twits like George Stephanopoulos, Georgie boy, who, you know, would come after you. He was part of the war room. James Carville, who called you all kinds of names. Of course, Hillary Clinton, who was the mastermind behind that. And, you know, it was a nightmare, continued to be a nightmare. And, of course, it came into the 2016 elections, too, when President Trump was accused of various things. But no one's proved that he did anything like Bill Clinton.
They even bragged about, they even put out the DVD about their so-called war room, they called it, and which was, you know, the place where they gathered together to make a plan to destroy people's lives. And it didn't matter if they were telling the truth. That made no difference whatsoever. It was about seek and destroy, period. And they bragged about it. And then Stephanopoulos had the gall to say, "No, it's nothing personal." Really?
Well, but isn't it interesting that, yeah, nothing personal. Isn't it interesting the media would talk about your relationship with Bill Clinton, but won't talk about Hillary Clinton's relationship with women, Uma Abedin and others, which is well known. I mean, tell me if I'm right or wrong.
No, you're right. I mean, there were back in the day when I had that conversation with Bill. There was a girl named Debbie who worked in his office there somewhere, and there was major rumors about her, about this girl and Hillary. And Bill acknowledged that he could have cared less, that she was more sexually active with women in certain ways than he was. I said, well, that's pretty amazing. So I just dropped it because I was surprised and a little bit appalled. I just at him being so cavalier and casual about it. But I thought, okay, I won't bring it up again. And I've just been surprised that over the years that there hasn't been more found out about that or come to the forefront.
Well, it shows you the leftist media, which, you know, and I'll tell you something, in today's day and age, there's no shame in being gay or being lesbian. I mean, you
not at
basically,
all.
You get an award if you are. In fact, all of the primetime commentators on CNN are gay, okay? So it doesn't hurt your career at all. But the deceit here is not being gay or being lesbian. The deceit is lying to the American people that you're not, continuing to be in the closet as far as I'm concerned, and there should be no shame, you know, in being who you are as long as you tell the truth.
But when are they going to? When have they ever told the truth?
No, it's part of their overall line.
So, exactly. You know, you just deny it. Or
you know, there used to be
a partial truth, and then everybody thinks that everything else you've said is truthful.
No, and everybody knew this. In fact, the joke in Washington was, what is the only thing that Bill and Hillary have in common? And the answer is they both date the same women. So,
well, not me.
That being said, Gennifer, thank you for coming on.
Great to talk to you, Larry.
You too. Bye, Jen.
Of all the branches of government, the judiciary has become the most capricious and dangerous. The judicial system is completely out of control in our once great nation. Renegade left-wing judges have put their corrupt and evil ideology ahead of justice, and they have assumed control of courtrooms across our land. Local, state, or federal, these judges rule like kings. At Freedom Watch, we started the Judicial Selection Strike Force to bring accountability and justice back to the judiciary. Go to judicialselectionstrikeforce.org and donate to protect your freedom from these out-of-control judges. Many have lifetime appointments, and too few care about justice if it goes against their ideological beliefs. That's judicialselectionstrikeforce.org to donate and protect your freedom from the runaway judiciary. Once again, that's judicialselectionstrikeforce.org to donate.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
Welcome back to Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. We've had a great show today, and let me wrap it up. I'll call this segment The Verdict, because what we've seen right now is there are certain people who are guilty of starting this special counsel investigation with former FBI Director Robert Mueller. There are people who are guilty of covering things up. And, let me reiterate something which is really important here, is that James Comey, the former director of the FBI, fortunately former, has covered up perhaps the biggest scandal in American history. And that's what is layered on top of all of this. And this should be part of Special Counsel Mueller's criminal investigation. As you know, I went forward with Dennis Montgomery, an NSA, CIA whistleblower, an individual who was a contractor. He left with 47 hard drives, over 600 million pages of information. We had him on our very first show, and you can find it on our archives at Radio America and at freedomwatchusa.org. And I urge you to listen to it. Now, he gets into basic information, not classified. But what he said is that the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, other justices, 156 judges, prominent businessmen, including Donald Trump, anyone who's been critical of the government under Obama and otherwise, has been subject to surveillance, illegal, unconstitutional surveillance. They even got my banking records in 2007. Obviously, I've been an advocate against the government. This was given to Comey. Montgomery got immunity. He testified for 3 hours in front of special agents Walter Giardina and William Barnett. And I don't blame them. He's under Comey's control. They are under Comey's control. And this investigation was suppressed. It was buried. And frankly, it's an obstruction of justice. So if Special Counsel Mueller is going to do his job, particularly since there are allegations of unmasking of confidential information concerning General Michael Flynn and others, by Susan Rice and other individuals in and around the Obama administration, given the fact that there's this mass surveillance on the American people, and in particular our judges, given the fact that Congress won't investigate because they're worried that stuff's going to fly out about them from these files. Look, Anthony Weiner just pled guilty today to sending pics to underage girls. God knows what goes on Capitol Hill. It's like Sodom and Gomorrah. These people are afraid to get into that because it'll destroy their careers, destroy their personal lives, their boyfriends, girlfriends, mistresses, God knows what. It's mutual assured destruction. So now you've got this guy, Mueller, the special counsel, and he should be forced. We need to rise up that he gets into this stuff because no one has done it so far. Now, I'm not hopeful because Mueller actually covered up what Robert Wright and John Vincent, my former clients, FBI special agents, knew about Saudi money laundering leading up to 9/11. If that investigation had proceeded when Mueller was FBI director, we might not have had a 9/11, notwithstanding the negligence of George W. Bush and Condoleezza Rice, who actually had it predicted, and it was sitting right on the president's desk that something like that was going to happen. I don't know what they were doing. I guess W was off in the White House gym working out. But this is our government today. And that's why it's so important to really understand what goes on in Washington, because we're going to need to rise up. Perhaps we need a peaceful protest ourselves with millions of Americans coming to Washington, D.C., demanding that our government start to represent us. We need to support President Trump. I'll be critical when I need to be. I was critical last week. I said, look, you made a promise to move the embassy in Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, to the Israelis and to the American people and to Jews and Christians. You got to honor that promise. But because of this surveillance of the president and others around him, don't be surprised if this week, when the president visits Israel, all kinds of stuff starts flying out like it did with the Russian ambassador a week ago, accusing the president of disclosing classified information or other things to try to destroy his relationship with Israel. How much the Obama administration tried to harm his people in Israel and elsewhere. And now it's time for the American people and rise up and demand that our government do its job. Because if we don't do it, this republic is very short-lived. We have a bunch of people on Capitol Hill who frankly are in it for themselves, who don't represent the American people. We have a court system that's 70 to 80% run by Obama, Clinton appointees who don't respect the Constitution. We have an executive branch now led by President Trump that is under siege and which everyone's trying to destroy except the American people. So that's my message today on Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman.